Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want that right there. So you know what that means. We're making a print. Yeah, this wall up here has been pretty bland for a while. I'd rather have something pretty to look at. And it's going to be a little tricky because this thing will be blocked half the time anyway. This is a standing desk and I work standing quite a bit of the time and my monitors will just end up blocking it. But you know what? When I'm sitting down, I'll have something nice to look at. Also, someone recently bought the first print of this, so I have to get it scanned and printed up for my customer, and I figured, hey, what a perfect time to make my own version and make a little video, take you guys along with me. Now, in terms of size, what we're looking at now is about 3 feet wide, and I think that's going to be just a tad small. 6 feet though, like big old Bertha over here, that's going to be way too big. So I'm leaning towards 4 feet wide, which is just about the width of my monitors actually. And that'll be about like that. And I think I'm just going to cut out a piece of craft paper in that size, hang it up on the wall, and then decide if it's going to be the right size. 16 by 48 is the official size. Looked a little dinky though, especially opposite the big desert layers piece. So I decided to try something bigger. I went to 18 by 54, which is kind of an odd size. I don't offer my prints in 18 by 54, but I took the picture. I can make whatever size I want, baby. So I think this looks a lot better, much more balanced, and I think that's what I'm gonna go with. But I'm excited about this. It's scanning day. Yay! Got my negative here, and if you're wondering why the first frame is missing, it's because when I was making the on location video for this, I was trying to get some footage of me disappointedly watching the trains get taken away, and I was advancing the film lever on my roll film back, and I just skipped right past the first frame. Now, if you saw my video from a long time ago where I made that big desert layers piece, you'll notice some key differences in my workflow here. First off, I've obviously ditched the old negative tape to a ground glass scanning technique. This inverted fluid method yields much sharper and cleaner scans. I've also gotten better since then at the post-production workflow. I've drastically reduced the amount of time spent cleaning dust simply by using the ISRD function on my scanner. With that turned on, I only had to clean literally 3 or 4 dust spots on this image. Compare that to the insanity that was the desert layers negative back when I didn't really know about ISRD. That's a couple hours of my life I'll never get back. Now in Silverfast, I make color corrections and tonal adjustments entirely with the gradation tool until I feel the image is about 90% on its way to perfect, all the while being careful not to clip the shadows or highlights. I also like to disable sharpening in the scanner software because I prefer to do that later on in Photoshop with the Smart Sharpen tool. So with the bulk of the color corrections done, I take the file from Silverfast into Photoshop for that round of sharpening and to clean what little dust there may be. Then the 16-bit TIFF is off to Lightroom for final, sometimes agonizing tweaks to the colors and tones to finish off that last 10% to perfection. Or at least like 9%, maybe 8.5%. And I know I could stay in Photoshop to do this last 10% of color correction, but I prefer doing it in Lightroom for reasons too long to list here. I then export the file from Lightroom, still as a 16-bit TIFF, to be resized for print back in Photoshop. Then there's 2 more rounds of smart sharpening, yes 2. And once I'm finally brimming with confidence that I've created the most perfectly balanced and sharpened scan the world has ever known, I send the files off to ProPhoto for printing. But because this was going to be the first time I've ever printed this image, I made sure to get a proof done, which is just a little mini version of the print so I can make sure the colors are looking good. Aw, look at it. Upon examining the proof, I determined the colors were spot on, which is great, but the shadows were just a smidge darker than I wanted. There was faint detail there in the digital file that didn't come out on the print, so I lightly boosted the shadows on the image and sent new files to the lab. My monitors are very accurately calibrated and so are the lab's printers, but whenever you take pixels to paper, there are bound to be minor differences like these. And this is why we do proofs. The smaller 12 by 36 inch print for my customer is a pigment print on Hahnemühle photo rag paper. This is made with inkjet printing technology wherein ultra-fine ink droplets are sprayed onto white paper to create the image. At its core, this printer is really no different than the inkjet printers most people have at home, except this one's got a few more LBs on her. It also uses 12 different inks instead of the 4 we'd usually see in consumer printers. Oh, and it's operated by a technician with 20 years printing experience instead of a do-it-yourselfer that skimmed the user manual. Now, I didn't know this, but the technician actually has to adjust the ink spray rate based on how absorbent the paper is. Photorag happens to be very absorbent and so needs more ink than, say, glossy paper. I found that kind of interesting. This type of print is typically what I do for my limited editions because pigment prints are pretty much the gold standard for high-end fine art printing. The results are gorgeous with deep blacks and a lovely matte finish, and most importantly, they just about last forever. Well, I mean, not forever, but by the time one of these prints shows any signs of age or fading, it ain't gonna be a problem for you, or your kids, or probably your grandkids. For the larger print, my piece, I went with a C-type print on Fuji Crystal Archive Pearl paper. Unlike pigment prints, which are created with, well, pigment, C-type prints are created with light by way of multicolor LEDs, which expose the digital image to photosensitive paper that then goes through a wet chemical process. Developer, bleach, fix, wash, then a heating stage to decurl the paper and finally dry. So what comes out of this big beast of a machine is much more like a darkroom print than a pigment print. As you can see, C-type printing is a more complex process that requires some very specialized equipment you ain't gonna find at the local Costco. Despite their inferior longevity compared to inkjet, 30 to 75 years, depending on who you ask, before noticeable discoloration or fading, C-type prints offer some benefits that make it the perfect fit for this application. Standing back there at ProPhoto with my camcorder in hand, watching these prints come out of those machines, kind of made me feel like a proud papa watching his twins come out of... Big thanks to the staff at ProPhoto Connection for letting me back there to see how the sausage is made. So now I have both prints back in the office here, and I have to say, the colors are spot on. They're super sharp, especially the smaller one, because smaller prints always look a little sharper. And I even got my extra shadow detail that I was after. So I think they're both stunning. If I'm being honest though, I actually prefer the pigment print for its rich tones, deep blacks, and that fine matte finish. Now don't get me wrong, the C-type print is no slouch. This I think is also gorgeous, but it just renders things a little differently than the pigment print does. So if I kind of prefer the pigment print, why the hell did I do a C-type print? Well, pigment prints, for all their beauty and archival characteristics, they have an Achilles heel. Pigment prints on hand-and-mule paper have to be framed behind glass or plexiglass. You can do a spray coating, but that never really goes on that even. So glass or plexiglass, these have to be protected. It's really easy to scratch areas with a lot of ink. So like the black areas, they'll scratch super easy. But also pigment prints, in order to meet their archival characteristics, they have to be protected from air pollutants and things like ozone, because that'll actually deteriorate the paper and ink faster. So pigment prints need glass or plexi. And if you look at my big desert layers piece here, you'll notice there's no glass or plexi. It's just the print and nothing is between me and it. And I love this framing style. I think it's super clean, it's modern, and I really like having no reflective glass between me and the image. The C-type print, first off, it has a built-in protective top layer. So the paper, much like film, is composed of multiple layers. Some of those layers have dyes in them, and that's what creates the actual image. But the very top layer is actually a protective layer. And believe it or not, you could hang this up on the wall with nothing over the top of it, no lamination, no glass, no plexi, and it will be perfectly well protected. But also, that top layer creates such a smooth print that you can do what I did on this piece, which is you can laminate it. So you'll notice this is not glossy, and this is super high gloss. I don't really like high gloss prints. So what I do is I get this mounted on a gator board, which is a real rigid board, and then I have them laminate it with a luster lamination. And that takes the gloss right out of it. So next step is I gotta take this down to the mounting shop, and then we'll bring it back for one final comparison to see how a pigment print compares to a C-type print with the luster lam applied. It is good looking. I'm not going to pretend this is my first time seeing it though. I saw it down at the mounting shop. But this will be my first time seeing it right next to the pigment print. So let's have a look-see. Well, looking at these side by side mostly just reminds me how much I freaking love this treatment. The C-type pearl print with the luster lamb. Damn, it looks good. By the way, the company that did the mounting is called Display Solutions. They're in Santa Ana, California. And that's who Pro Photo Connection outsources their mounting to. So normally I have Pro Photo handle the whole thing start to finish, but I wanted to show you the print before I had the luster lamb applied. Now, anytime you take a glossy print and take the gloss out of it, you're bound to wash out the blacks a little bit. You can kind of think of it like if you're holding a wet rock in one hand and a dry rock in the other. The wet rock is going to have a depth and richness that the dry rock just won't. So when I had the luster lamination applied, I was worried that the black tones were going to get a little soft on me. But I'm happy to say, looking at this, they still look super rich. It did not wash it out like I feared. Now you might be thinking, why not just do a matte finish print and skip the lamination entirely? Because after all, if it's a C-type print, it doesn't need a lamination to protect it. Well, I do a pearl print because Fuji pearl paper has a characteristic backlit glow to it. Because of its pearlescent base, it picks up light really well, and if the light hits it just right, it kind of looks like it's glowing. And I really like that look, I just hate the high gloss finish. So I've come up with this treatment as a way to kind of have my cake and eat it too. Now that I have both pieces done, I can finally ship off this print to my customer. He's been waiting patiently much longer than he needs to because I've been working on this video. Thanks, Steve. So I got to sign and number both of these. Then I'm going to box up this pigment print and get it shipped off to Texas. And I, of course, need a frame for my piece. I'm actually going to be framing it myself, but it's raining cats and dogs today, so we'll have to save that for another day. I'm going to be repurposing a frame from a piece that I made a little over 6 years ago. A piece that I've grown to hate. At least the frame's nice. So it's too big, though. I got to cut it down, rejoin the corners, so it fits the new frame. For all the woodworkers out there, try to rein in your jealousy. This is, in fact, a Bauer brand miter saw. What are you working with, like a DeWalt or Festool or something? You'll make it to Bauer one day, kid. The miters on professionally made frames are held together with what are called V-nails. I don't have a V-nailer, and I'm no professional, so I went with a much hackier method. Basically just slathered it in wood glue and clamped it with a strap clamp. I also added some brackets on the back side to reinforce it. It's not exactly an elegant solution, but I think it'll work. I also cut some risers out of 1x2 for the back side of the print to bring the face of it in line with the front of the float frame. That's attached to the gator board just with some super glue. Now I cut the frame a 1/2 inch bigger than the print so I'd get a 1/4 inch reveal. And the last time I put together one of these, I had a hell of a time getting that gap even all the way around. But thanks to the suggestions of some YouTube viewers, I decided to try some tile grout spacers to make the job easier. It worked like a charm. So I buttoned up the back, threw on some picture frame wire, and the thing was finished. And now, I'm finally going to get to see it hanging on the wall. Let's do it. Come on. Come on. Where are you? Oh, come on. There we go. All right. All right, let's see how bad the monitors block it. And I'm at standing position. Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? Yep, that's the feeling. That's the feeling I've been chasing. There's truly nothing like seeing your work in tangible form. It's my absolute favorite part of photography, hands down. And I've been trying to figure out how to describe that feeling to people. And the best I could come up with is, you know how we all have that part of us, that thing inside, the are you sure thing? That's always second guessing everything you're doing. Like, it's a big part of me. You sure you want to, is that really what you want to do? Is that the route you want to go? That voice, which never shuts up. It's like when I do this, it's finally like, all right, okay. It shuts up for just a little bit. The only other time I've gotten that, by the way, is like when I've gone backpacking and I'm laying next to a pristine alpine lake and it just feels right. It feels like that's what you're supposed to be doing at that moment. Making prints is that feeling. Unfortunately, you can't do it like this every time. I don't have infinite wall space. Next best thing I think would be making a book. So I'm going to try and go down that route in the future to scratch my itch for printing. But go get yourself some prints. You need it, and you don't even know it. But thanks for coming along with me on this little journey. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. If you got something beneficial out of this video and want to buy me a beer to say thanks, check the link in the description.